Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the amendment,
The gentleman has the floor.
I'd like to echo the words of the gentleman from Alexandria, but remind the body of some unintended consequences, not for women who choose to have an elective abortion because of an unwanted pregnancy, but some unintended consequences for pregnant women who wanted the child but are now forced to terminate the pregnancy. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And I've had a lot of time to talk through this with my own OB and get real examples. And the first is these issues are not just black and white. Remember I told you during the session that the procedure to complete an incomplete miscarriage is the same as an abortion. Virginia law does not distinguish between completing a miscarriage and an abortion, and I'm not sure federal law does either. So where you have a woman who needs to go in for a procedure, child is not developing, is not alive, is she going to now be forced to make the decision on whether or not is she going to be forced now to pay for that out of her own pocket or be banned from going to VCU or MCV to have that procedure? Second, suppose you have a woman who is pregnant with multiples, quintuplets. Chances of survival for any of them is low. But she's informed by her doctor, if we reduced the pregnancy to 2, chances of survival for the 2 increases dramatically, and her chances of survival increase dramatically. That's not a deformity. That's not imminent danger to the mother. It doesn't fall within any of the exceptions. If this amendment passes, that very difficult decision she has to make, she'll also now have to factor in whether or not she can afford to have the procedure. We need to be very careful when we deal with these abortion issues. We politicians tend to think of things in black and white. But if you talk to some doctors or pregnant women, they are dealing in areas of very gray areas that the law is not accommodating. And for those reasons, I'm voting against this amendment and ask you to do the same.
Gentlewoman from Campbell, Ms. Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the amendment.
Gentlewoman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise in support of this amendment. While I am very compassionate for the statements that were already made, I would like to say that as a elected official, I like to not thinking of things as black and white, but as life and death. And this amendment actually is consistent with the federal Hyde Amendment and is consistent with what our federal law allows for and our state statute still allows for. There is some misinformation that I know I have been receiving in emails that would state that the state statute would no longer cover when the fetus has an incapacitating physical deformity or a mental deficiency. And that is not correct because this does not affect the state statute. But it does put us in line with the federal statute, the same federal statute that the president's recent executive order mirrored, and that I believe would put us consistent with what the federal law already is. And I hope it'd be the pleasure of the House to accept this amendment.
Shall the bill be amended in accordance with the governor's recommendations? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 64, noes 30.
Ayes 64, noes 30. The amendment is agreed to.